3 spine-chilling true stories uncovered, sinister secrets of the haunted dead of night revealed. In Willow Creek, Ohio, twilight was a curtain that flickered with whispers. Sarah, a single mother, fought to keep her life together. The clatter of dishes spun around her thoughts as she returned home from work, the air thick with a sense that something was watching. She could almost feel it, a presence lurking in the shadows of her yard, creeping closer with each heartbeat. "Mom, did you hear that?" Jake's voice trembled in the stillness, tinged with dread. "There's something outside." The world around them shifted as the bumps echoed in the darkness, jabbering whispers boarding her senses. Flickering lights danced unpredictably, casting grotesque shadows that flicked like spirits around the edges of their once safe haven. Jake had been on edge for weeks, his father's absence amplifying his fears, but these strange happenings heightened the panic. The safe space they built together began to dissolve like morning fog, replaced by an oppressive heaviness that pressed against their chests. As they dug into the history of their home, unease settled into their bones. Sarah shared Jake's unease, her protective instincts now on high alert. They stumbled upon the story of the last family vanished without a trace, leaving behind only echoes of forgotten laughter and a chilling silence. Their quest for answers revealed Mr. Collins, the seemingly friendly teacher, whose offers of help now felt like honey dripped with poison. Gripping his shoulders, Sarah whispered, "We need to keep this between us. No one can know." But as they searched through old articles and pictures, the sense of being monitored crushed any comfort. Mr. Collins' eyes followed them, a shadow unfurling behind his too friendly smile. The dread clawed at Sarah's insides like a trapped animal. Where was the safety that once enveloped this home? As night swallowed the sun, they lay frozen in fear beneath a cacophony of thumps. A breath caught deep in Sarah's throat as she recalled the chilling warnings they'd read: a family, a curse, an eternal stagnation. Before they could gather their thoughts, Jake whirled towards her. "Did you hear that?" Silence, heavy, thick silence. Then a loud crash shattered the tension outside, the darkness ahead pulsed with a strange invitation. "Let me in." His heart raced, fear coursing through his veins. A sense of doom sank its claws into Sarah's heart. She pushed the curtains aside but saw nothing. A shiver ran down her spine. How was this happening? They were rooted in reality, yet something unearthly seemed intent on dragging them into an abyss. She turned to Jake, his eyes wide with terror, searching for answers in a world that was flipping upside down. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As fear tightened its grip, they sunk deeper into the mystery, driven by the whispers that grew louder each night. What horror dared to rise with the moon? As shadows festered, an idea wormed its way into Sarah's mind. What if they pushed too hard? What if they became the next victims of a history refusing to be buried? The air thickened with expectation as another crash resounded outside, louder this time. The voice loomed again, deep and menacing, "Let me in." Sarah felt the walls of their existence closing in, her heart throbbing like a drum in an empty hall. Had the past finally come to collect its due? What lay behind their fleeting tranquility? Would they dare to delve into a darkness darker than their fears? The moment stretched like an eternity. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, echoing the unsettling rhythm of dread invading their sanctuary. "Mom," Jake's voice barely broke through the shroud of terror. "What should we do?" His wide, frightened eyes searched for reassurance, but she felt as lost as he was. "Stay quiet," she whispered, her voice trembling. Yet, the oppressive air around them seemed to thicken. Shadows elongated, bending towards them as though eager to consume their fear. Each creak of the house seemed to join the growing chorus outside, a haunting melody of chaos that seeped into their minds. Jake clutched the blanket tightly, instincts flaring in the primal part of his brain. Maybe we should call Dad. Fear seeped into his words, thick and poisonous, as if even saying their father's name would conjure more uncertainty. No. We can't let him know about this. Sarah snapped, then regretted the fierceness of her tone. He flinched, she softened, wrapping her arms around him. We'll figure this out together. Just hold on tight. Outside, the sinister whisper grew louder. Let me in, the voice urged with an otherworldly timbre, resonating through the walls. It was tantalizing, laced with a dark promise that hung over them. The noise had a magnetic pull, and against her better judgment, Sarah felt drawn to it. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, plunging them into darkness. The only illumination came from the moon filtering through the curtains, casting ghastly silhouettes on the walls. Shadows danced like phantoms, twisting into agonized faces, making her skin crawl. Mom! Jake's panic-stricken plea cut through the haze. It's okay, she soothed, gripping him tighter. But even she wasn't convinced. They had to do something. Her mind raced. Why did it seem like this darkness was feeding on their fear? What did Mr. Collins have to do with this? Panic and desperation collided within her as she whispered again, we need to find out more. As if answering her unspoken thought, the room reverberated with a loud bang. A shudder ran through the house, followed by a slow, deliberate scratching sound creeping just beyond the door. The walls trembled as the voice warned once more, let me in. It was becoming unbearable. Sarah wrestled with a decision. They could take that risk, step out into the unknown, or remain cooped up, suffocating in fear. What if their only way out lay beyond that door? Jake, stay here, she commanded, slipping from the blanket's safety. He shook his head vehemently, eyes darting toward the door. No, I'm coming with you. Stay. She insisted, feeling exposed, achingly aware of the pounding beyond their thin refuge. But he wouldn't listen. In his eyes burned a fire she recognized, fear but also defiance. With a deep breath, she turned the knob, heart hammering, a sudden sense of urgency spiking the air. As the door creaked open, a flood of cold wind swept through, carrying with it whispers that gnawed at the edges of reality. Welcome home, Jake gasped. The sound of something breathing on the other side echoed through the frigid air, sending icy fingers crawling up Sarah's spine. She stepped back instinctively, and as she did, the shadows surged forward, forming a figure in the doorway. And then, everything changed. That's not Mr. Collins, Jake whispered in disbelief, horror spilling across his features. Sarah's insides twisted. Who or what stood there? The figure beckoned with a crooked finger, a dark silhouette that writhed and shimmered with malevolent intent. Come closer. As fear gripped her heart in a vice, she realized they were standing at the precipice of something unspeakable. Could they confront it, or would they be swallowed by the darkness? Mom, Jake's voice quivered, what do we do now? Outside, the relentless wind howled, and the figure in the doorway seemed to breathe in their terror. They had crossed into a realm of shadows, and the cost might just be everything they knew. What was waiting behind that darkness? Would they dare to find out? The figure in the doorway shifted, its features indistinct, a cloak of night shrouding whatever grotesque horror lay beneath. Sarah's heart raced, each beat drowning out the whispers swirling around them. Jake, she choked out, but the words felt heavy, as if masked by the very darkness that loomed before them. Mom, please. Jake's voice was a thin edge of panic. The room felt smaller, the familiar walls closing in, engulfed by the monstrous presence that beckoned. It was as if dread draped itself over them like a suffocating blanket, whispering promises of terror and uncertainty. Stay back. Sarah commanded, stepping forward, driven by something more than fear, a flickering flame of fierce protectiveness. Yet, the closer she got, the more that interior light flickered. Why was she drawn to it? It felt unnatural, this strange pull that called her deeper into the abyss. "Come closer," the figure urged again, voice a low, slithering hiss that promised release from their fear, but offered none. With every seductive word, they could feel their wills begin to waver, as if the shadows coaxed them to surrender. "Don't listen," Sarah shouted, clenching her fists at her side. She turned away from the doorway, her instinct screaming that whatever it was, it had the power to infect their minds. Jake trembled beside her. "Mom," it looks like his words faltered, hesitant, as if naming it would give it form, shape, an existence they could not afford. "It's not real, Jake. It's not real," she repeated, though even she struggled to believe it. Shadows danced around her limbs, and then suddenly, they recoiled as if burned. Instincts kicked in, urging her to fight against whatever feeble hold the apparition had on their senses. With no other choice, she rushed back toward the room, dragging Jake with her, but she felt the chilling grip of a phantom hand latch onto her shoulder. The touch was ice-cold, sending a violent shudder through her body. She swallowed back a scream, spinning around to face the grotesque being that loomed close behind. "What do you want?" she demanded, trying to sound brave, but her voice cracked like brittle glass. A hissing laughter erupted from the figure, echoing all around them, resonating deep inside her mind. "Not what I want," it hissed, "but what you fear." It lunged forward, and everything went dark. A moment of silence enveloped them. In the stillness, a smell like decay permeated the air. Sarah pushed against something warm and heavy. "Jake!" she screamed, panic flooding her veins. The shadows had swallowed them, wrapping tighter like serpents. A new voice, not the terrifying whisper from before, broke the suffocating silence. "Find the truth," it said evenly, the words ringing like a bell echoing in a cavern of despair. "Or you will become the shadows." And in that moment of dread, the light seeping through the cracks of the dark showed her glimpses of faces in torment, lost souls trapped in the grip of darkness and despair, their silent screams haunting the void. Sarah felt faint, her knees buckling beneath her. "Jake, we have to wake up," she whimpered, shaking him. "We can't stay here." But the shadows only chuckled, the sound vibrating through the air, mocking them both. She was caught in a waking nightmare, teetering on the verge of slipping away into oblivion. And then, with a deafening crash, the front door burst open, a gust of wind rushing in, tearing the muffled whispers from their grips. The pressure around them vanished. Sarah gasped for air, pulling Jake close as sunlight spilled into the room. The dark figure faltered, writhing against the light. "This isn't over," it hissed, receding back into the shadows. "Mom? What just happened?" Jake's voice trembled, confusion clouding his innocent features. "I don't know," Sarah whispered, her heart still racing, "but we're not safe yet." Above them, the wind howled again, the doors creaking ominously in response. The thought hung heavy in the air, how much more would it demand from them? What lay beyond the threshold where darkness reigned? Would they survive whatever force was leashed within the walls of their own home? But one thing was certain: they had to uncover the truth, or darkness would consume them completely. What did the being mean by that final warning? And what did they truly fear? The sunlight poured into the room, its golden rays scattering the oppressive shadows, but Sarah knew this was only a brief reprieve. The air around them still trembled with residual fear, and the looming threat was far from gone. She could still feel the echoes of that haunting hiss gnawing at the edges of her mind. "Let us get out of here," she urged, gripping Jake's hand tightly, as if she could tether him to reality. They dashed toward the door, but the wind outside moaned with a familiarity that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. Each gust felt like a warning, a reminder that safety was an illusion, an open door to the unknown. "Mom, where do we go?" Jake's voice was small, swallowed by the vastness of the dim hallway that lay ahead. Panic flared within her as she realized just how isolated they were in this labyrinth of fear. "We need to find the basement," she said, her voice steadying despite the roar of uncertainty inside her. "We might find anything that can help us understand what's happening." As they moved down the hallway, shadows darted across the walls, twisting and bending like the creature that had tormented them. The house creaked and groaned, as if it were a living thing, asserting its presence, pushing back against their escape. Each footfall echoed louder, the sound ricocheting off the walls, heightening her sense of foreboding. They reached the door to the basement. It stood slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness inviting them in. "Stay close," Sarah whispered, knowing very well that the shadows were hungry, eager to reclaim what had slipped through their fingers. The staircase descended into a void. Each step felt like a descent into the underworld, each creaking wooden plank a reminder of the horrors that lurked in the depths. The strong stench of mildew and decay wrapped around them like a shroud. They reached the bottom, the air thick and stifling. "Look for a light, Jake," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. As Jake fumbled around in the dark, Sarah's eyes strained against the gloom, searching for anything that might offer clarity, a hint of their next move. Jake's hand brushed against something, and he yanked it toward him. A dusty lantern. "Is this it?" he asked, hope flickering in his eyes. "Yeah, that should work. Light it up." She could feel the anticipation and almost desperate need to push back against the shadows tightening around them. As Jake fumbled with the matches, Sarah listened intently, every creak from the house amplifying her anxiety. The lantern finally ignited, illuminating the basement with a weak, trembling light. Shadows skittered back into the corners, yet the edges of their world were still fraught with dread. "What now, Mom?" Jake's voice trembled, eyes wide as he surveyed the cluttered space. Old furniture, dusty boxes, and faded photographs littered the ground. "Let us look through those boxes," Sarah replied, pointing to a stack in the corner. A chill raced down her spine as she wondered what they might uncover, what memories, what truths. As they began to sift through the broken remnants of the past, a piece of yellowed paper caught Sarah's eye. She unfolded it slowly, a gasp escaping her lips. It was a journal, its pages filled with spidery handwriting that spoke of pain, betrayal, and darkness. "Mom, what does it say?" Jake leaned in closer, curiosity mingled with fear. "It's about the house," she gasped, her eyes darting back at the shadows. The air turned icy as more words came into focus. "The darkness hungers, feeding on our fears." A sudden crash echoed from above, jolting them both. "We have to get out. Now!" Sarah shouted, adrenaline surging through her. They bolted for the stairs, but as they turned, the shadows surged forward, swirling like a cyclone, blocking their escape. Panic flooded Sarah's heart. Had they awakened something? Or were they merely puppets trapped in the shadowy dance of an unseen puppeteer? "Mom! What do we do?" Jake cried, his small voice quivering against the oppressive darkness. Sarah's mind raced, their survival hinging on this very moment. "We have to confront it, Jake. We have to face our fears." But in the depths of her heart, she wondered, as darkness consumed them, what fears would they have to face? Would they ever escape this monstrous grip? Suddenly, a whisper cut through the chaos, sharper than the shadows surrounding them. "Join us." And just like that, the darkness pressed in once again, leaving Sarah to wonder if this was truly the end or merely the beginning. What other truths threatened to tear them apart? The shadows danced menacingly around Sarah and Jake, the flickering lantern throwing frantic beams of light against relentless darkness. With no time to breathe, Sarah felt the heat of desperation tight in her throat. "Stay with me, Jake," she shouted, her voice raw with fear. "Mom, I don't like this." Jake's face paled, inching closer to her as if her warmth could ward off the cold grip creeping at their heels. "Neither do I, but we can't give up now," Sarah pleaded, realization creeping through her. The journal wasn't just a record of the past, it was a warning. "We need to find out more about this darkness," she whispered urgently, scanning the basement for any clue. They couldn't turn back, not now. Just then, from the corner of her eye, she noticed something shimmering beneath the dust of an overturned trunk. She knelt to investigate, lifting the lid tremblingly. Inside, she discovered a collection of grotesque wooden carvings, each depicting twisted faces twisted in agony. What the hell are these? Jake breathed, stepping back, eyes wide with horror. Jake, this might be important. She picked one up, an intricately carved figure depicting a figure with empty eyes, mouth twisted in a silent scream. As she held it, an indescribable dread washed over her, shaking her to the core. Had these figures been crafted as charms? Or curses? Before she could contemplate this further, the heavy rumble of footsteps echoed from above, and an icy finger of dread traced down her spine. We have to move now. Sarah was already on her feet, instinctively pulling Jake closer, protecting him from the encroaching dread. But the shadows did not relent. They thickened, coiling around them like tendrils of smoke, beckoning with the sinister promise of all that was hidden. Jake stumbled backward in fear, terror radiated off of him. Mom! They're trying to pull us in. We need to get to a window. She shouted, her heart racing as she scanned the basement for escape. The lantern-esque glow flickered ominously, threatening to give way to consuming darkness. Suddenly, the journal slipped from her fingers, falling open again as though eager to reveal more. Look, Jake. She pointed to a passage that glowed eerily under the lantern's light. When the dark arises, light must be offered. The heart's fears will unlock the shadow's door. What does that mean? Jake's voice was small, filled with trepidation. I don't know. But we have to find out. Sarah felt a whirl of uncertainty. In her gut, she knew this was a test of their very souls. A loud crack echoed above them, shaking the house as debris rained down, and something soft began to crawl across her foot. Panic surged. Run! We have to get upstairs! She yelled, shoving aside boxes in a frantic search for a way out. Just as they turned to flee, the basement door slammed shut with a deafening bang, trapping them in this nightmare. No! No! Please! Jake screamed, pounding on the door, his only lifeline to safety. Jake, listen to me, Sarah said, her voice cutting through his terror. We have to face this fear together. A low, guttural growl resonated through the basement as the shadows undulated, revealing figures that loomed closer, their shapes shifting and melding within the darkness. The whisper returned, face what you hide, join us. Heart racing, Sarah turned back to the carvings, her mind racing. Could they be more than just decorations? We have to find a way to break this. She thought, her eyes scanning the chaotic surroundings. Then, Jake gasped, eyes wide as he pointed to the journal, now lying ominously with a new entry visible. Mom! It says we have to confront them now. Before they consume us. The shadows closed in tighter, wrapping around them like suffocating blankets. Sarah's breath caught as she gripped the carving tighter, feeling an energy pulsing through it, as if it was alive and waiting for her decision. Okay. Let us do this, Jake. Together, whatever it takes. As she steeled herself against the advancing darkness, she felt a shift beneath her, a tremor of fear mixed with determination. This was no longer just survival, it was a battle against the fears every parent hopes to shield their child from. And as they prepared to confront the darkness that hungered, an overwhelming question pulsed within her: what new truth would they uncover, and could they walk away, unscathed? With an earth-shattering crack, the basement walls shuddered, and the shadows surged forward, howling in wrath. The fight had begun. What awaited them in that suffocating darkness? And would they find the strength to descend deeper, into the very heart of terror itself? The ground beneath Sarah trembled, threatening to open and swallow them whole. She squeezed the carving in her hand, feeling its rough edges biting into her palm, grounding her in the chaos. The darkness swirled around them, shrieking in a language both ancient and fearful. Mom! What do we do? Jake's voice quavered, breaking through the echoing terror. Each word was a lifeline, a plea for courage they desperately needed. Trust me, Jake. She shouted back, forcing the words through her tight throat. The shadows pressed closer, their shapes becoming more defined, morphing into grotesque figures that reached for them with skeletal hands. They looked like the carving's vague forms of anguish and despair, ready to pull them into a realm of unspeakable horror. Face what you hide, the whispers repeated, slithering through the air, curling around them like barbed wire. Sarah's heart raced. Every instinct screamed to flee, but the whisper called to her, demanding confrontation. Jake fell to his knees, the terror clamping down on his chest. Mom, I can't do this. Tears streamed down his cheeks as his brave facade shattered. The sight pierced Sarah's heart, igniting her own fears of failing him. She knelt beside him, clutching the carving like a weapon. We will face this. Together, Sarah said fiercely, her fingers trembling but her resolve solid. She raised the carving in front of her, staring defiantly into the leering faces of the shadows. What do you want from us? In that moment, the whisper abruptly shifted. A cacophony of laughter erupted from the darkness, chilling her to her bones. You do not know your own fears. Then, a figure emerged, stepping into the light's reach, a woman with hollow eyes and a face that twisted with anguish. You must release what binds you, she rasped, voice like gravel. Let go, and you can join us. Sarah's insides twisted. Join you? No. I will not. But the woman's chilling smile told her there was more, something lurking beneath the surface, secrets born of pain, some part of herself she didn't want to confront. Face your fears or be consumed. The shadows enveloped them, pressing closer, enveloping her in despair. Mom, make it stop. Jake cried out, his voice breaking, desperation slicing through the air. In that moment, Sarah had a choice. She could cling to her fears, the burdens of motherhood, or she could confront them, drag them into the light. You won't take us. She screamed, her voice echoing through the basement, carving out space where darkness dared tread. She stepped toward the glowing words of the journal, feeling their energy surge through her. I will break this. We will not be afraid. The shadows hissed, recoiling. Sarah's resolve built, a fire igniting within. Her heart pounded like a drum, steady and certain. Jake! Hold on! She shouted, raising the carving high above her head, channeling her determination into that singular object, willing the shadows to reveal the truth behind their torment. Face what you hide echoed again, resonating deeper now, the shadows starting to thin, pulse, and shift as if caught in a tide. But the basement trembled violently, dark forces pushing back, and with a final roar, the entire structure shook, making Sarah stumble. The flickering lantern flickered, its light flickering in and out like a heartbeat. Jake screamed, but she barely heard him over the cacophony. Everything felt more fragile, like glass on the brink of shattering. Stand firm. She shouted, grasping Jake's hand tightly, feeling his small skin slick with sweat. We're going to break through. As the shadows shrieked once more, a piercing light exploded from Sarah's heart into the carvings, illuminating the basement in a blinding glow. The true nature of their fears hung heavy in the air, like a bitter tide emerging from the waves of darkness. But would it be enough? Would confronting their deepest fears save them, or would the darkness swallow them whole? The floor began to crack, the faces from the carvings forming deeper, exposing more horrifying truths. As the shadows surged and recoiled, an invisible force reached out to pull them away. What emerged from the depths would determine everything. Would they find salvation in the end, or would the darkness finally claim its prey? The floor shattered beneath them, splitting wide as if a great beast threatened to emerge. A powerful rumble echoed, drowning Sarah's ears, but she refused to be swallowed by panic. She stepped closer to Jake, her heart racing, and together they braced themselves against the oncoming storm. What's happening? Jake shouted, his eyes wide with fear, glistening with tears. "It's the shadows. They're trying to break us," she replied, clenching the carving tighter, its jagged edges digging into her palm, a reminder of the pain they had to face. Suddenly, the woman with hollow eyes lunged forward, her skeletal hands reaching out, clawing at the air. "You cannot escape. Your fears will claim you." The very essence of despair rolled off her in waves, each word dripping with venom. "Step back," Sarah shouted, shields rising in her heart. "We're not afraid of you." And just like that, the shadows circled closer, their whispers transforming into a chorus of shrieking voices that pierced through the thick darkness. "You are nothing. You cannot win." Amid the chaos, something shimmered at Sarah's feet. A glint of silver amidst the dust. She squatted down, gripping a broken shard of reflective glass, revealing a distorted image of herself, her face twisted in terror yet bearing a flicker of defiance. "Jake," she urged, catching his eye. "We can use this. Look." She held up the glass. "Maybe the light can help us." The dark figures recoiled, their forms momentarily slipping back into the shadows. "What do you think you're doing?" The woman spat, her expression morphing into rage. "Facing what we hide," Sarah screamed, holding the shard like a torch. The glass sparkled with an eerie light, revealing the grotesque aspects of the shadows, their faces twisted with emotions: grief, fear, sorrow. Each reflection mirrored the deep-seated fears of Sarah and Jake, dark secrets they had buried within, but now exposed, alive and writhing. One shadow lurched forward, its fingers long and claw-like, stretching like a dark vine towards Jake. "Mom!" Jake cried, nearly stumbling backward, eyes wide with panic. "No!" Sarah shouted, her voice ringing clear as the glass shard cast shadows back upon their attackers. "Look at them. They're just as scared as we are." At that moment, Sarah realized. The shadows were not monstrous, they were reflections of their own fears, manifestations of the doubts and insecurities she had tried to shield Jake from. Visions of failure, loss, and despair that had haunted her since he was born. "Jake, we have to show them." "What do you mean?" he stammered, confused. "Forgive them. Understand that they stem from us." With certainty building like a storm, Sarah shouted into the whispers. "I'm not afraid of you. You don't control me." With every word, the power behind her feet surged, igniting the room with light. The shadows screamed, their voices intertwining into a cacophony, quaking the walls. Suddenly, Jake took a deep breath and raised his voice. "I forgive you. You're a part of me, and I choose to be brave." The ground shook violently, and the shadows trembled as if caught in a wind. Powerful beams of light shot up from the carving and the glass shard, swallowing the darkness in their brilliance. But amidst the furious battle between light and darkness, the ground quaked beneath them, cracking wider, revealing a glimpse of vast nothingness. A gaping maw threatened to swallow them into an abyss. The shadows began to howl in despair, their forms distorting. "Hold on!" Sarah yelled, gripping Jake's hand tighter, pulling him back. Would their bravery forge a path through the darkness, or would their haunted past drag them to the abyss? As she felt the ground pull back beneath them, a terrible chill rushed forth, and a final, dreadful voice whispered from the depths, "You think you can escape?" In the blinding light, shadows lurked, waiting for one last chance to claim their souls. The ground tore further apart, a jagged fissure spreading like a dark river beneath Sarah and Jake. The light bounced off the shard, a thin silver thread trying to stave off the encroaching darkness. But the echoes of the shadows swirled around them, a haunting symphony that seemed to claw at their very being. "No! We will not fall!" Sarah shouted, her voice battling against the rising tide of despair. She felt the icy wind wrap around her, threatening to tear her away from Jake. She could see the look of terror in his eyes, the way he trembled against the uncertain ground beneath them. "Mom, what if they're right? What if we can't get out?" Jake whispered, clutching her hand tighter. The warmth of their connection felt fragile, as if even the smallest jolt could sever it. They're lying. Fear can only hold us if we let it. Sarah knew it was a mantra, but desperation drove her to repeat it. The shadows hissed in response, their whispers turning sinister, echoing her own doubts. Perfect shadows. Perfect fears. Jake's gaze flickered to the fissure, where tendrils of darkness writhed, beckoning them toward the void. I see them. They're trying to pull me in. His voice strained with panic. Fight it, Jake. She pointed at the glass shard, the glimmers reaching out to combat the shadowy figures inching closer. Use the light. Remember, they are part of us. As if her words acted like magic, Jake took a deep breath. I'm not afraid of who I am. He cried, and the shard grew brighter, illuminating the tortured faces that surrounded them. Sudden silence fell as the shadows recoiled, pacing like wounded animals. Face your fears. Offer us your darkness. The hollow-eyed woman commanded, her voice an unsettling blend of temptation and threat. No. Sarah barked. I refuse to relinquish what they want. She felt the edges of her being fray as memories flooded her mind, each failure haunting her, whispering lies. But facing the shadows began to morph her pain into strength. She raised the shard higher, and with every ounce of will she could muster, she called out, "You have no power here. You exist because I allow you." Tremors jolted the air as the shadows struggled to maintain their corporeal form. Each flicker of light took on a life of its own, igniting inside them the raw energy they frantically sought to suppress. The brightness pulsed and surged, revealing glimpses of youth, laughter, and love, shining memories that pierced the veil of fear. Mom, look! Jake gasped, pointing toward the edge of the gaping chasm before them. The light from the shard began to mend the broken ground, knitting the fissure together, moment by moment. And now, Sarah murmured, her heart beating fiercely, we turn our backs on this darkness, Jake. We walk toward the light. But as they stepped back, the howling shadows surged forward, desperate. You will regret this. You cannot escape us. Their voices wrapped around them like chains, biting and tearing, threatening to drag them down. Just as the last of the light began to flicker, Sarah clenched her teeth, preparing for an inevitable struggle. Together. We fight together. But a sudden cold pressed in around them, the air thick with a pungent, fetid stench. From the depths of the fissure, a ghastly figure began to emerge, its visage a grotesque parody of the woman who had been harrying them. You think you can hide? Your fears are mine to claim. Sarah's heart pounded, and she felt the ground shake beneath her, sending shudders of dread through her veins. In that moment, her breath hitched. The shadows weren't just fear, they were something worse, a reflection of threats unknown. Jake! Sarah exclaimed, panic racing up her spine. What if they're not just fears, but something more? As the figure loomed closer, shimmering between corporeality and nightmare, a chilling realization struck her. If shadows could manifest their fears, what was it that they still hid from themselves? In that deafening moment, the air heavy with anticipation, Jake's voice trembled, Mom, what if we can't forgive ourselves? The black void shifted. Ominously, waiting, hungry for their answer. Facing the abyss, would they find the courage to confront what truly lay within? The ground trembled violently as the horrifying figure emerged fully from the chasm, its distorted features twisting into a wicked grin. Sarah's heart raced, her instincts screaming at her to flee, but she stood rooted, paralyzed by the sight. The face had once been beautiful, radiating warmth, but now it was an unrecognizable mask of malice, a fractured reflection of the person who had haunted her dreams and regrets. No! It can't be you! Sarah cried, her voice wavering as the words escaped her lips. The shadows seemed to pulse with jubilant energy, almost gleeful at her turmoil. The figure chuckled darkly. You know me well, don't you? hiding behind your feeble light, pretending you can escape the truth. With horror, Sarah realized this wasn't just a fear, it was an embodiment of all the guilt and sorrow she had pushed away. This was the ghost of her past, and with it came the memories too painful to confront. No. I want to let you in. Her shout was more defiance than belief, an affirmation against the encroaching dread. Jake squeezed her hand, his knuckles white. Mom, what do we do? It's getting closer. Hold tight. She shouted over the cacophony of shrieks rising around them, shaking the very air. She lifted the shard again, its light now flickering as though uncertain under the weight of the darkness. Luminous shards blazed in its glow, swirling around them like fireflies in a midnight fog. Stop. The figure screeched, eyes narrowing to slits. You think you can outshine the darkness? You're merely giving it strength. But I know you. Sarah shouted defiantly, shoving the shard of light forward. You're not real. You're just echoes of my own despair. The brightness surged again, piercing through the shadows, forcing the dark entity to recoil. With each step backward, she felt a strange warmth rise within her, battling against the fear that had held her captive for so long. Memories surged, visages of laughter, glimmers of hope that had followed her like shadows throughout her life. Maybe there was still light inside her after all. Jake! She yelled, her voice strong again. Think of the good. Think of the people who love us. Mom, Jake hesitated. The shadows, sensing the shift, intensified their clamoring cries, shrieks for retribution that clawed at the surface of his resolve. Now. Together. Sarah urged, the shard vibrating with newfound brilliance. Call to the light. Remember the love. Jake took a deep breath, his resolve hardening. I'm not afraid. I see you for what you are. He shouted, his voice firm as he matched his mother's words. In that instant, the light blazed like a supernova, illuminating their path as the shadows screamed in terror, twisting and receding with each surge of brilliance. But just when it seemed they might escape, a colossal figure, tenebrous and malformed, began emerging from the fissure, eclipsing the earlier horror. This was a shadow greater than fear, a living embodiment of despair, the worst of their regrets manifesting into a single dreadful entity. It's not over. You cannot outrun me. It bellowed, stretching its cold fingers toward them, seeking to claim them into the abyss. Jake, hold my hand. Sarah whispered urgently, her voice trembling with urgency. We can't let it take us. We're stronger together. As they grasped each other's hands, an electric pulse surged through their bodies. The light surged to an indomitable strength, threatening to push back against the looming darkness. But the shadows whispered secrets, taunts of failures hidden deep within, probing into their hearts. What if we lose? Jake's voice cracked, the shadows creeping closer, eager to take advantage of his doubt. Then we fight with everything we have. Sarah shouted, fear thrumming through her veins but tempered by the fierce love she felt for her son. We face what's coming, or we become part of the darkness. As the dark entity drew closer, ready to wrap them in despair, they had only a fragile barrier of light standing between hope and hopelessness. Would they truly be able to face the darkest of fears, or would they be consumed by the very shadows they sought to escape? As the towering shadow loomed before them, vacillating between reality and nightmare, Sarah and Jake felt an overwhelming rush of cold wash over them. The air was thick with dread, the looming darkness whispering promises of despair, wrapping around their hearts like chains. The chilling voice boomed, you cannot escape. You are part of me. No. Sarah shouted defiantly, willing the light of the shard to pierce through the deepening shadows. She gripped Jake's hand tighter, feeling the tremor that ran through him. We're not afraid of you. You don't own us. Jake's fear hung heavy between them, but he summoned what bravery he could. We've faced worse. We can beat you. His voice quaked, but there was a clarity behind his words that gave Sarah strength. She drew from him, finding a flicker of hope igniting within her. As the entity lunged forward, its grasp like ice reaching to ensnare them, Sarah raised the shard, igniting its light until it blazed with a brilliance that began to crack the shadows. The darkness hissed in fury, recoiling from the illumination as if scorched. "Stop this. You cannot prevail." But Sarah felt it, the collective pain, the burdens of past regrets, the loss that clawed at her heart now transformed into a burning determination. She was not just fighting for her own survival, she was fighting for Jake's future. "You're not the sum of my fears," she declared. "You will not control our destiny." With that, they stepped forward, reluctant but resolute. "Face what you hide, indeed," she screamed, pouring all her energy into the shard. "We acknowledge our fears, but they do not define us." Light exploded from the carving, a surge of fire breaking through the suffocating despair. The entity writhed, its features distorting and contorting into grotesque shapes as the light grew brighter, illuminating the entire basement in an otherworldly glow. As the vibrations pulsed through them, they felt warmth envelop them, a comforting presence that was stronger than fear, more powerful than regret. "Let it go," Jake shouted, his voice growing in volume. "Let it all go." In that moment, as the darkness shrieked in protest, Jake closed his eyes and remembered the joy that suffused their lives through the chaos. "I forgive the failures. I forgive the pain." "Me too," Sarah cried out, feeling the shadows begin to unravel. "What happened in the past will not dictate our future. We break these chains." As the piercing light cascaded outwards, the figure, the embodiment of their past, the one that had trapped them so cruelly, began to disintegrate. The cacophony of despair twisted into shrill cries, fading away like echoes lost to the wind. With the final release of light, shadows shattered against the walls, crumbling into nothingness as the imposing figure bellowed a final warning, one last attempt to pull them back. "You cannot escape your shadows forever." But they were done listening. They braced themselves as the last remnants of darkness melted away. As the light filled the basement, it resonated with laughter, love, and hope, spilling forth like a river rushing downstream, washing away the remnants of their fears. Finally, silence settled in, a peaceful blanket that curled around them. They stood together, exhilarated yet exhausted, the weight lifting from their shoulders. A glimpse of warmth invaded the space where darkness had reigned. "We did it!" Jake exclaimed, joy bubbling in his voice as he looked up, wide-eyed. "Mom, we actually did it!" Tears prickled in Sarah's eyes, a mix of relief and pride welling up within her. She pulled Jake into her arms, feeling an overwhelming swell of gratitude in her heart. "Yes, my love. Together. Always together." As they made their way back upstairs, the house felt different. The oppressive air had lifted, replaced by a gentle breeze that carried whispers of solace. The sunlight flooded the windows, spilling warmth and light into the corners where shadows once lurked, marking a new chapter for them both. With each step, they found courage in one another. They stepped outside, the world brighter than it had ever been, and stood beneath the sun, a stark reminder that they could indeed face their fears and reclaim their lives from the shadows that historically haunted them. "Let us go make our own memories," Sarah said, with a newfound sense of purpose, squeezing Jake's hand as they walked toward the open sky. "The past won't hold us down anymore." And in that moment, as they headed into a future rich with possibility, Sarah knew they could face whatever lay ahead. They could cherish light, accepting shadows but never surrendering to them again. So, hold on to your hopes tightly and don't let the ghosts of yesterday write your story. If you're feeling inspired by this journey, don't wait another second. You need to subscribe to our channel right now so you never miss a moment of our exclusive tales. Smash that like button now to show your support, and help us feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and reactions to this thrilling conclusion. I'm dying to hear your theories and what this story means to you. And share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this powerful conclusion, because together, we can face any darkness that comes our way. Thank you for being with us on this incredible ride.